ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀਕਲਾ ਟਾਈਮ ਟੀਵੀ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਦਾ ਵਰਲਡ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਨਿਊਜ਼ 'ਚ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਰਿਦਮ। ਖਬਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਸ਼ੁਰੂਆਤ ਕਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਮਾਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕੁਝ ਖਾਸ ਹੈਡਲਾਈਨਸ ਤੇ। ਕੇਂਦਰੀ ਕੀਵ 'ਚ ਹੋਇਆ ਬੰਬ ਧਮਾਕਾ, ਮੌਕੇ ਤੇ ਭੇਜੀਆਂ ਗਈਆਂ ਐਮਰਜੈਂਸੀ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ, ਕੀਵ ਦੇ ਮੇਅਰ ਨੇ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ। नेपाल च श्रद्धालुओं नूं लैके जा रही बस हुई हादसाग्रस्त, 17 की हुई मौत, कई हुए जख्मी। अफगानिस्तान च महसूस किए गए भूचाल के झटके, 4.2 रही भूचाल की तीव्रता। ते हुण खबरां विस्तार नाल। बुधवार तड़के यूक्रेन की राजधानी कीव च जोरदार धमाकिਆਂ की आवाज़ सुनाई दी। धमाकिਆਂ की कोई तुरंत अधिकारित पुष्टि नहीं हुई। कीव के मेयर विताली क्लिटस्को ने कहा कि धमाके बुधवार तड़के शहर के केंद्र के जिले च होए। एमरजेंसी सेवावां के नक्शिਆਂ च धमाकिਆਂ तो लगभग 20 मिनट पहला राजधानी ते इस दे आस-पास के खेतर च हवाई हमलिਆਂ की चेतावनी वाले सायरन सुनाई दिते सन। भारत के गुआढ़ी देश नेपाल च दर्दनाक सड़क हादसे का मामला सामने आया है। मध्य नेपाल के कावरे पालन चौक जिले च मंगलवार शाम को एक सड़क हादसे च 17 लोगों की मौत हो गई। इस हादसे में 15 तो वध लोग जख्मी भी हुए हैं, जिन्होंने इलाज लिए हस्पताल दाखिल करवाया गया। हादसे का शिकार हुई बस एक धार्मिक समागम च शामिल होने वाले लोगों को लैके जा रही सी। अफगानिस्तान च सवेरे करीब 1:45 4.2 तीव्रता का भूचाल आया। नैशनल सेंटर फॉर सिस्मोलॉजी ने दस्सिया कि भूचाल की डूंघाई जमीन तो 267 किलोमीटर हेठां सी। देर रात अफगानिस्तान च भूचाल के तेज झटके महसूस किए गए। अजे तक किसी नुकसान की कोई खबर नहीं है, पर अफगानिस्तान च कई बार भूचाल के झटके महसूस किए गए हैं। लातीनी अमरीका के सब तो वड्डे देश ब्राजील च पुलिस ते मौजूदा राष्ट्रपति जायर बोलसोनारो के समर्थकों विचाले झड़पां होईयां। समर्थक पुलिस हैडक्वार्टर च भड़क गए। इत्थे बोलसोनारो के समर्थकों ने डा सिल्वा की जित का विरोध कर रहे कई वाहनों को अग लगा दी। पुलिस ने प्रदर्शनकारियों को काबू करने लई अथरू गैस के गोले भी छड्डे। दरअसल अक्तूबर च होईयां राष्ट्रपति चोणां च लूला डा सिल्वा ने मौजूदा राष्ट्रपति जायर बोलसोनारो नूं करीब 21,39,000 वोटां नाल हराया सी। बोलसोनारो ने पहला ही स्पष्ट कर दिता सी कि जेकर वो चोण हार जाते हैं तो साबका अमरीकी राष्ट्रपति डोनाल्ड ट्रंप के मार्ग से चलणगे ते नतीजिਆਂ ਨੂੰ स्वीकार नहीं करनगे। कनेडा च आए दिन पंजाबियों दी मौतां हो रही ने, जिस कारण हुण उन्हां मापिਆਂ च दहशत फैल गई है जिन्हां दे बच्चे कनेडा विच पढ़ रहे हैं। इस दे नाल ही पंजाब दे पिंड नारो माजरा दे मेहनती परिवार नूं उस वेले गहरा सदमा पहुंचा जदों रणजीत सिंह दे कनेडा रहिंदे पुत्तर रमनप्रीत सिंह सोही दी ट्रक हादसे च दर्दनाक मौत का समाचार उन्होंने प्राप्त होया। इस संबंधी मृतक के भरा जगप्रीत सिंह बब्बू ने दस्सिया कि रमनप्रीत सिंह लगभग 8 साल पहला अपने चंगे भविख के लिए उचेरी सिक्ख्या लैण लई स्टडी वीज़े ते कनेडा गया सी। उत्थे ही उसने पक्के होने उपरंत अपना ट्रांसपोर्ट का कारोबार शुरू कर लिया, जिस दे चलदे बीते कल उसने जद अपना ट्रक खाली करने दे लई ट्रक नूं पिछे वल कीता तां डाला खोलते समय ब्रेक ना लगे होने कारण उक्त नौजवान कंध ते ट्रक दे विचकार आ गया, जिस कारण रमनप्रीत ने गंभीर रूप च जख्मी होने तो बाद दम तोड़ दिता। कनेडा प्रधानमंत्री जस्टिन ट्रूडो की लिबरल सरकार ते सिख आगू जगमीत सिंह की एनडीपी पार्टी विचकार तनाव वधदा जा रहा है। एनडीपी आगू जगमीत सिंह ने कहा है कि जेकर सेहत संभाल संकट नाल नजिठण लई कोई संघी कार्रवाई नहीं हुंदी है तां उन्हां दी पार्टी लिबरलां नाल कीते गए सप्लाई ते भरोसे दे समझौते तो पिछे हटण लई तैयार ने। यह समझौता 2025 तो पहला चोणां तो बचण लई हाउस ऑफ कॉमन्स च मुख वोटां ते एनडीपी घट गिनती सरकार का समर्थन करेगा। बदले विच लिबरल्स ने सेहत देखभाल समेत एनडीपी दीआं कई तरहीज़ां ते काम करन दा वादा कीता है।
I visited and spoke with healthcare workers, and they shared stories of how in Calgary, at the Children's Hospital, because the demand is so high, there are trailers set up outside the Children's Hospital to deal with the excess demand. Children have died in Alberta or in BC, and in Ottawa, the Red Cross has had to be called in to children's hospitals. We are faced with a serious crisis. Parents are dealing with, and children are dealing with, agonizing wait times where having a child unable to breathe for any amount of time is heartbreaking. And that is something that parents are going through right now across the country. And we know that healthcare workers are burnt out, are pushed to the limit. These are people who care deeply about their patients, who care deeply about people, and are feeling like they're unable to do their work because they're so understaffed and under-resourced. We are at a breaking point. Things are very serious, and it's specifically for our children's hospital. Our children are at risk right now. Given how serious it is wrong that the Prime Minister of this country is not showing up to deal with this national crisis. Justin Trudeau has a responsibility to sit down with premiers and find a solution. First and foremost, that is the number one thing we're calling for. It's that given how serious this is, the Prime Minister needs to show up. If I was Prime Minister, that's what I would do immediately. Meet with the premiers, look for solutions. And there's a number of things we can do. We know that the solutions are going to require making sure we increase our recruitment, so more training of frontline healthcare workers, making sure that there are more spaces available, and that's something the federal government can help with. We need to make sure that if anyone in this country has international training in healthcare, they're able to work in that field. We can't afford not to have people in our country, or we can't afford for them not to be able to work. People who are trained in their fields need to be able to work in their fields. And finally, we need to make sure there's good pay. And the federal government made some commitments. Justin Trudeau made some promises. He should follow through with those promises to make sure people get a good, decent wage when it comes to healthcare. And there's a number of additional steps we can take, but fundamentally what we're asking for is, given how serious this is, the Prime Minister needs to step up, the federal government needs to step up and deal with this crisis. We have with us today a nurse from here in Ottawa who's going to share her experiences. And I think it's really important for us to listen very carefully to Rachel Muir, who's a registered nurse. And she's going to talk about what it's been like, how serious this is for patients coming to the hospital, for herself and her colleagues, how dire the situation is here in Ottawa in healthcare. Before I get to Rachel, I'll just do it in French, and then we'll have Rachel share her story. For families, I know in addition to the healthcare crisis, people are really experiencing a lot of pressure because of the cost of living. And I just want to remind folks that as of today, the rental benefit that we fought for nearly 2 million Canadians qualify now for an additional $500. So if you are receiving the Canadian housing benefit, please make sure you apply for the additional support that is now available as of today.
ਮਿਸੀਸਾਗਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਕਾਨਫਰੰਸ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਸਟੀਫਨ ਲੀਚੇ ਨੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਕਿ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਕੰਪਿਊਟਰ ਵਿਗਿਆਨ ਤੇ ਤਕਨੀਕੀ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ ਦੋਵਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਾਠਕ੍ਰਮ ਨੂੰ ਅਪਡੇਟ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਜੋ ਵਧੇਰੇ ਹੱਥੀਂ ਸਿੱਖਣ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਸਕੇ। ਲੀਚੇ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਇਸ ਸੂਬੇ ਅਤੇ ਦੇਸ਼ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੰਪਿਊਟਰ ਸੂਚਨਾ ਪ੍ਰਣਾਲੀ ਪੇਸ਼ੇਵਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਬੰਧ 'ਚ 17,800 ਅਸਾਮੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਸਿੱਖਿਆ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਕੰਪਿਊਟਰ ਅਧਿਐਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਨਵੇਂ ग्रेड 10 ਦਾ ਕੋਰਸ ਸਤੰਬਰ 2023 ਚ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋਵੇਗਾ। ਲੀਚੇ ਨਾਲ ਮਿਸੀਸਾਗਾ ਮਾਲਟਨ ਤੋਂ ਐਮਪੀਪੀ ਦੀਪਕ ਆਨੰਦ ਵੀ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹੋਏ।
Reconfirm and announce that we have secured another tentative agreement with education workers represented by the OCW. This is good news, and it demonstrates our commitment to deliver agreements with education unions that ensures students across Ontario remain in class where they belong. This has always been our number one priority, especially over the past few years of disruption that has left profound impacts on kids across our country. It's why we have made record investments to get them back on track. Students across our province today are benefiting from a $650 million increase in funding this year alone, in addition to more than 7,000 education staff that have been hired under our government to support our kids and ensure they get back on track. And to do that, they need stability. Right to June, with the clubs and the extracurriculars and sports that really help enrich a life of a child. And I know and I hope that all remaining education unions and school boards and this government, we will continue to work together and come together so that Ontario's government can keep children where they belong, in class, learning without disruption. It is critical, because that education is what will help our students succeed in the jobs of tomorrow. And that's why we're here at Magellan Aerospace with my colleague, Minister Vic Fideli, Patrice and Deepak, to announce our next steps Ontario's government is taking to ensure students across our province can compete in a changing and disrupted global economy, and that they can gain access to good paying jobs of the future. Job creators and innovators have been very clear. What we teach our children must be cutting edge, It must reflect the changing marketplace. It must emphasize real-life application and life and job skills. And it must embrace an innovative ecosystem that challenges young people to be students of ambition and to think boldly. We want to help produce the next generation of made in Ontario and made in Canada technology that is researched, tested, and ultimately manufactured right here in this province, in our country. It's how we ensure success for our children and our country's long-term prosperity. And that means students' education must keep pace with a rapidly evolving workforce in Ontario's growing economy. It's being driven by automation, by emerging digital platforms, artificial intelligence, and other technology. Our world has changed significantly since 2008, when the former curriculum was last updated in science, in computer sciences. Most people have had separate devices for listening to music back then. Taking pictures and making phone calls and browsing the web on your phone was pretty limited, if you could do it at all.
ਕੋਲਿੰਗਵੁੱਡ 'ਚ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਦੀ ਸਿਹਤ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਸਿਲਵੀਆ ਜੋਨਸ ਨੇ ਘੋਸ਼ਣਾ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਿ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਸੂਬੇ ਭਰ 'ਚ 27 MRI ਮਸ਼ੀਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਸੰਚਾਲਨ ਲਈ $20 ਮਿਲੀਅਨ ਦਾ ਨਿਵੇਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਕੋਲਿੰਗਵੁੱਡ ਜਨਰਲ ਅਤੇ ਮਰੀਨ ਹਸਪਤਾਲ ਵੀ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹੈ। ਜੋਨਸ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਘੋਸ਼ਣਾ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ 'ਚ ਸਿਹਤ ਸੰਭਾਲ ਦੇ ਮੁੱਦੇ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਹਤਰ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਲਈ ਸਾਡੀ ਵਚਨਬੱਧਤਾ ਦਾ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਜੋਨਸ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਮੌਜੂਦਾ ਮਾਰਗ 'ਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ 50 ਤੋਂ ਵੱਧ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਹਸਪਤਾਲ ਯੋਜਨਾਵਾਂ ਤੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਜੈਕਟ ਨੇ।
Today, I am very pleased to announce additional steps to improve access to care right here in South Georgian Bay and across Ontario. Our government is investing over $20 million to support the addition of 27 new MRI machines in hospitals across Ontario. This funding will allow patients, including those in small and rural communities, to receive necessary and critical diagnostic imaging closer to home. And for Collingwood General and Marine Hospital, this investment will provide the funding needed to operate your very own, very first MRI. Several other hospitals in small and rural communities across Ontario will also receive funding to operate their first MRI machine. This funding will provide closer and more convenient access to diagnostic imaging for local patients. And I don't need to tell the healthcare professionals in this room what it means to have access to that information here so that you don't have patients traveling in areas and communities that aren't always as easy to travail. With more MRI services throughout the province, patients can be diagnosed faster and, if needed, begin treatment and follow-up care even sooner. This investment is another way our government is ensuring Ontario hospitals have the funding and technology they need to continue delivering world-class care. Thank you again to Collingwood General and Marine Hospital and all hospitals across Ontario, as well as the MRI technicians and imaging professionals across Ontario for your incredible dedication to providing Ontario patients with exceptional care. Our government will continue to work with you and our health partners to ensure our healthcare workers have the tools and resources they need now and into the future, and to continue building a stronger and more convenient healthcare system centered on the needs of patients and families. You know, it's frankly an example of how our hospitals are working together. So when we have high numbers of pediatric patients, primarily because of the virus season that we are experiencing this winter, we have the opportunity through air ambulance, Orange, to make sure that where there is capacity within the Ontario health system, we get that access to the patient as quickly as possible. Look, I get it. It's not ideal as a family to have a child that far away, but it is also important to appreciate that by doing that air transport, that child was able to be assessed and treated sooner. We and the ministry are awaiting a proposal that is coming forward from Collingwood General Marine Hospital, expecting in the next few months. But I want to be clear, you know, our government and Premier Ford has made it very apparent that we will be investing in community hospitals. We've made many, many examples. In the current pathway, we have over 50.
ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਡਗ ਫੋਰਡ ਨੇ ਓਟਾਵਾ ਵੈਲੀ ਦਾ ਦੌਰਾ ਕੀਤਾ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਫੋਰਡ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਪੈਮਬਰੋਕ 'ਚ ਸ਼ਾਹ ਲੈਂਬਰ ਦੀ 175ਵੀਂ ਵਰ੍ਹੇਗੰਢ ਮਨਾਈ ਗਈ, ਜਿਸ ਦੀ ਸਥਾਪਨਾ 1847 ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਸੀ। ਇਹ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੀ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪੁਰਾਣੀ ਪਰਿਵਾਰਿਕ ਮਲਕੀਅਤ ਵਾਲੀ ਲੰਬਰ ਕੰਪਨੀ ਹੈ। ਫੋਰਡ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਜੇਕਰ ਇਹ ਹਰਬ ਸ਼ਾਹ ਐਂਡ ਸੰਸ ਵਰਗੀਆਂ ਕੰਪਨੀਆਂ ਲਈ ਨਾ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਨੈਕਟੀਵਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਯੋਗ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੇ, ਅਸੀਂ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ A ਤੋਂ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ B ਤੱਕ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਯੋਗ ਨਾ ਹੁੰਦੇ। ਫੋਰਡ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਸ਼ਾਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਮਾਣ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਵੱਡਾ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਹੈ।
It's great to be here alongside Minister Todd Smith, Minister Graydon Smith, no relation, even though they look like brothers. And we got the whole Smith clan down at Queen's Park. I think we have 5 of them or 4 of them. And PA Rick Breeze and the one and only MPP John Yakubuski. I'll tell you, I'm going to tell you a little side story. He has been on to me every single day for the last year about coming here. And when John speaks up, I'll tell you, everyone listens. He's a great guy. He's probably one of the most loved people down at Queen's Park. Almost as loved as he is in this community. And, you know, you talk about 175 years. I was thinking that's when you first got elected, Yak. And we affectionately call him Yak. And I know Yak's family has a huge history here. I don't need to tell you that there is no bigger champion for Renfrew County than John is down at Queen's Park. I also want to thank Rob Berardi. Thank you, Rob, for coming out here, doing a great job at Hydro 1. Fred Blackstein. Fred, thank you for being our host too. And Chief Wendy Joko. Thank you, Chief, and thank you for everything that you do. Joko, I should say. Kristen Shaw, well, we just heard from Kristen, and Mayor of Petawawa, Gary Service, Mayor of Pembroke, Ron Jarvis, I should say, Warden of Renfrew County, Peter Eamon, and the entire team here at Herb Shaw and Sons Lumber for hosting us here today. As you heard, Shaw is a huge provider of many of the hydro poles used around the province, and they're absolutely world class. They've been a staple in Petawawa, providing good jobs and building this community again for 175 years. That's an exceptional achievement, and we're so proud of their continued success and their role in building Ontario. Shaw is a major part of our government's historic effort to build up high-speed internet access right across this province, which is on track to bring reliable broadband internet service to every community in Ontario by 2025. As we work towards building all of Ontario for the future, we're investing $4 billion towards achieving that goal. The largest investment in connectivity infrastructure in Canadian history. And the results of this commitment are already being seen in communities throughout Ontario. Just this past August, we signed agreements through the Accelerated High-Speed Internet Program with 8 internet service providers, companies, to bring improved access to up to 339 municipalities across Ontario.
ਕਾਂਸਟੇਬਲ ਐਡਰਿਊ ਹਾਂਗ ਦਾ ਨਾਮ ਟੋਰਾਂਟੋ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਹੈੱਡਕੁਆਰਟਰ ਵਿਖੇ ਆਨਰ ਰੋਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਡਿਊਟੀ ਦੀ ਲਾਈਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਜਾਨਾਂ ਦੇਣ ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਂ ਓਕਰੇ ਹੋਏ ਹਨ। ਸੀਨੀਅਰ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਅਧਿਕਾਰੀ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਇਸ ਸ਼ਾਨਦਾਰ ਵਿਅਕਤੀ ਨੂੰ ਮਾਨਤਾ ਦੇਣ ਅਤੇ ਸ਼ਰਧਾਂਜਲੀ ਦੇਣ ਲਈ ਆਏ ਹਾਂ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਅਧਿਕਾਰੀਆਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਹਾਂਗ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਰਧਾਂਜਲੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ। ਅਧਿਕਾਰੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਹਾਂਗ ਦਾ ਨਾਂ ਅਗਲੇ ਸਾਲ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਮੈਮੋਰੀਅਲ ਅਤੇ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਅਤੇ ਪੀਸ ਅਫਸਰ ਮੈਮੋਰੀਅਲ ਤੇ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਜਾਵੇਗਾ।
Mounted directly in front of us, the enduring honor roll. The honor roll in memory of those who've given their lives while on duty. A tablet that all of us pass by as we live life, speak with friends, consider our futures, and do so all in relative safety. I know that personally, since mid-July, with the addition of one name, I, like many others, have taken time to stop here and reflect upon those who have come before us. And today, as I look at the honor roll, name by name, which I cannot read and cannot hear without the triggering of emotion, names which will only be names to many, but for others, summon up face after face, full of honesty, goodness, pride, duty, and dedication to keeping our city and all of those who are in it safe. As future generations come and go, the honor roll will endure, and this same respect and debt of gratitude that we give here today will continue to be given to all of these individuals, although not personally known by many of us who pay the respects, and this will continue long until after all of us are gone. And today this rule grows by one. We are here to remember and honor the sacrifice of our fallen colleague, Police Constable Andrew Hong. We place his name on this honored tablet as we in the present and those in the future will always be reminded of those that gave their lives in the line of duty. It is time for a final roll call. Traffic Services Motor Squad, Staff Sergeant Shane Stevenson, parade for duty, roll call.
We are here to memorialize Andrew on our honor roll and to recognize and pay tribute to this wonderful man and exemplary police officer. Andrew inspired and mentored countless officers over his 20-year tenure with the Toronto Police Service. A man of steel who not only loved his job on the motorcycle squad, but who took immense pride in serving and protecting our communities. Today, Andrew's name joins a terribly long list of noble, brave, and compassionate officers. A list that acts as a daily reminder of the supreme sacrifice made by members of the Toronto Police Service in the performance of their duties.
बैंक ऑफ कनेडा ਦੇ ਗਵਰਨਰ ਟਿਫ ਮੈਕਲੇਮ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਾਲ ਦੇ ਅੰਤ ਤੇ ਭਾਸ਼ਣ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਬੈਂਕ ਆਫ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿਆਜ ਦਰਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਾਧਾ ਆਰਥਿਕਤਾ ਨੂੰ ਹੌਲੀ ਕਰਨਾ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਬੈਂਕ ਮੰਦੀ ਤੋਂ ਬਚਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਜ਼ੋਖਮ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਮਹਿੰਗਾਈ ਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਦਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਪਵੇਗੀ। ਵੈਨਕੂਵਰ 'ਚ ਵਪਾਰਕ ਨੇਤਾਵਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਅਤੇ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਸਾਲ ਤੇ ਪ੍ਰਤੀਬਿੰਬਿਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਮੈਕਲਮ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਸਖਤੀ ਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨਾ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ ਪਰ ਆਰਥਿਕਤਾ ਨੂੰ ਪੂਰਾ ਕਰਨ 'ਚ ਸਮਾਂ ਲੱਗੇਗਾ।
Last week, we raised our policy interest rate by 50 basis points to 4.25%. This is our 7th consecutive increase since we began raising interest rates in March to fight inflation. Deputy Governor Sharon Kazicki explained our decision in a speech last Thursday. Today, I want to take a broader perspective. I want to reflect on what we've learned in 2022. I want to discuss what could lie ahead, and explain what we're focused on at the Bank of Canada. It's a bit early for New Year's resolutions, but I already know what ours is. Restore price stability. We are resolute in our commitment to return inflation to the 2% target. Higher interest rates are working to rebalance the economy. Domestic demand is slowing, and we expect GDP growth will be close to zero through to the middle of next year as the economy adjusts to higher interest rates. This will relieve domestic price pressures, and inflation will come down. The adjustment will not be easy, but restoring price stability is the most important thing we can do to improve the economic and financial well-being of Canadians. So let me begin by looking back on the year that was. A year ago, the economy was getting closer to capacity, but we were still coping with new waves of COVID-19. Unemployment was a percentage point higher than it is now. Supply chain disruptions combined with strong global demand for goods had driven total CPI inflation up to 4.7%. But service price inflation remained relatively low, and inflation was not broad-based. At that time, we expected supply issues to gradually resolve and inflation to come down to close to our 2% target by the end of 2022.
ਡਾਊਨਟਾਊਨ ਟੋਰਾਂਟੋ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਹਨ ਦੀ ਟੱਕਰ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਕ 73 ਸਾਲਾ ਔਰਤ ਦੀ ਮੌਤ ਹੋ ਗਈ। ਟੋਰਾਂਟੋ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਨੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦਿੰਦਿਆਂ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਹਨ ਡੁੰਡਾਸ ਤੋਂ ਪੱਛਮ ਵੱਲ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਜਦ ਇਸ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਮਹਿਲਾ ਪੈਦਲ ਯਾਤਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਟੱਕਰ ਮਾਰ ਦਿੱਤੀ। ਔਰਤ ਨੂੰ ਉਸ ਸਮੇਂ ਹਸਪਤਾਲ ਲਿਜਾਇਆ ਗਿਆ ਪਰ ਬਦਕਿਸਮਤੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਗੰਭੀਰ ਸੱਟਾਂ ਲੱਗੀਆਂ। ਸੱਟਾਂ ਦੀ ਤਾਬ ਨਾ ਚੱਲਦਿਆਂ ਮੌਕੇ ਤੇ ਹੀ ਉਸ ਦੀ ਮੌਤ ਹੋ ਗਈ।
Has succumbed to those injuries and was pronounced on scene. We're asking that if anyone was in the area at the time, if they witnessed the event, or if they have dash cam footage, if they could please contact Toronto Police Traffic Services at 416-808-1900. I would expect that this intersection is going to remain closed for about another hour while the police finish their investigation.
The person who hit this individual, they stay on scene, and was it with the TTC, that driver?
Yes, there was a TTC vehicle that was involved in the collision, and the driver has remained on scene and is cooperating with the investigation.
Have next of him being notified at all?
I don't have the details of that part of the investigation.
What do you expect obviously there are many sort of layers to this sort of investigation. You have, reconstruction units here and all kinds of different officers and road closures. How long do you think this intersections will be opened up again?
The investigation's been going on for a period of time now. I would expect that within the hour we will see that the roadways will open. Spadina southbound is open, it's just northbound Spadina is closed, as well as Dundas east and west at the intersection. The woman was in her 70s. I don't have the details of exactly what occurred at the time of the collision. That is under investigation, and again we are appealing that if anybody witnessed it, they could please contact traffic services and provide their information.
ਵੱਲ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਨਿਊਜ਼ 'ਚ ਫਿਲਹਾਲ ਇੰਨਾ ਹੀ। ਦੇਸ਼ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੀ ਹੋਰ ਖਬਰਾਂ ਲਈ ਵੇਖਦੇ ਰਹੋ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਟਾਈਮ ਟੀਵੀ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦਿਓ ਆਗਿਆ। ਧੰਨਵਾਦ।